Good morning. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our Sabbath School presentation for series number 12 for June 17, 2023. So this would be the second to the last lesson for the quarter on the book of Revelation. And today, we are going to continue our discussion about the seal of God and the mark of the beast. This is now part 2 of our discussion. And so last week we discussed about the part 1, which was, the beginning of the seal and the mark of the beasts. So before we move on into our presentation and discussion today, let's have a word of prayer. Dear Lord, this morning we come to you again. Thank you for the blessing of this lesson that are going to be presented. And may it be that as we talk about details, Lord, that you give us an insight and, inspiration to understand them and present them the simplest that we can, that we may be able to follow through about what the Revelation 13 is all about. And thank you for hearing our prayers. In Jesus' name we pray. And so, this morning, we are going still to continue our discussion on a part 2 as a continuation of our discussion last week. And so, here is the key text for the day. This is in Revelation 13, verse 10, "He who leads into captivity shall go into captivity. He who kills with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints." Revelation 13:10. So in our discussion this morning, we need to look at the universal apostasy that has been foretold in Revelation. Political and religious powers will tempt everyone to worship Satan. And so those powers will impose a distinctive mark. Those who reject the mark to receive God's seal instead will be condemned to death. And therefore, it is vital importance to know how those events will happen and to understand what mark and the beast and the seal of God are. So we are going to deal with our outlines for our presentation this morning, the road to the apostasy. It says here that a mortal wound is healed, and then a horn, a beast, and a lawless one, which is false trinity, and then apostasy. The apostasy, how will it happen? And what is the mark, and how will it be received? And then we are going to deal with the seal of the redeemed. So that would be our overview of our discussion today. So as we journey through the Revelation 3 cosmic messages, which is actually one message by the three angels' message, this chapter continues our investigation of the mark of the beast and the seal of God. And let us summarize what we have previously discovered already. We saw that the final conflict and the age-long controversy between good and evil was over worship. And the rebel angel has challenged the government of God. This, being a dazzling brightness created with free will, has declared that God is unjust. He claims that God's commands are arbitrary and cannot be obeyed. In every generation, the evil one has led men and women to disobey God. And in the last days, God demonstrates that His gracious commands are for our best good. Saved by grace and redeemed by love, Christ's faithful followers willingly serve Him because they know His ways are the ways of lasting joy. And finally, Satan will attempt to pull off his greatest delusion of all time in a religious counterfeit called the beast power. We noted that this power would arise in Rome and become a worldwide system of worship. And let us continue with the further clues to identify of this power and discover essential truth about the coming conflict in the last days of Earth's history. Throughout the book of Revelation, the apostate church is described as blasphemous power. In Revelation 13:1, we find the expression, "On his head a blasphemous name." Verse 6, "Then he opened his mouth in blasphemy against God, to blaspheme his name, his tabernacle, and those who dwell on heaven." So we talked about this last week, blasphemy. The road to apostasy is, on our Sunday's lesson, on the road to apostasy, we are going to deal with the question is, how does the devil work by imitating God through false Trinity in Revelation 13? Notice the deadly wound in 13 verse 3 and found in, go back to chapter 5 verse 6. It's healing, 13 verse 3, 12:4 and 14. The time period allotted to the beast, activity, blasphemous activity in chapter 16 verse 6, and the final outcome in chapter 13 verse 7. What does it teach us about recognizing satanic powers at work? How is God's activity different? And so let's read the text. In Revelation 13:3, one of the heads of the beast seemed to have had a fatal wound, but the fatal wound had been healed. The whole world was filled with wonder and followed the beasts. And in the next verse here is that in Revelation 5 and 6, as referred to here, "Then I saw a lamb looking like it had been slain, standing at the center of the throne, encircled by the 4 living creatures and the elders. And the lamb had 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of God sent out into the earth." So if you notice, satanic is trying to, what is this, falsely represent and imitate what God is doing. So the heads, and so says there that had fatal wound, but a fatal wound had been healed. And John said, "I saw the lamb looking and had been slain at the center of the throne." So if you notice in this discussion today, and then we have another verse here, another verse in Revelation 13:5, the time period, the activities in 13:5, blasphemous activity in 6 and 6. "And the beast was given a mouth to utter proud words and blasphemies, to exercise its authority for 42 months. It opened its mouth to blaspheme God and to slander his name, his dwelling place, and those who live in heaven. It was given power to wage war against God, holy people, and to conquer them. And it was given authority over every tribe, people, language, and people." So how long was he given the power? 42 months. 42 months is the same as 1,260 days, because 42 months by 12 is 3.5 years. Now, it says here that a mortal wound was healed, and I saw one of his heads as if it had been mortally wounded, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the world marveled at the beast. 13:3. So, in our discussion today, the prophecy stated the beast would have been authority for 42 months. These prophetic months, Revelation 13:5. It has, Revelation 11 explains that those 42 months are 1,260 days, during the time God's witnesses would prophesy with difficulty. Revelation 11, 2-3, 1,260 days. And so in Revelation 12, 1,260 days are equal to a time and times and a half time. The same period that Daniel foretold for the persecution of God's people, a time and times and half a time. So in this case, we can see that Revelation reiterates what was prophesied in Daniel chapter 7 in verse 12. So, following a day-year Bible principle, we can interpret that 1,260 days as 1,260 years. Numbers 14:34, Isra 4:6, Leviticus 25:8. Therefore, the 1,260 days took place from 538 AD to 1798 AD, which is equivalent to 1,260 days. And if you notice, that's why we need to study the book of Daniel in conjunction with the book of Revelation to understand the prophecy. And they are talking about the same thing. 42 months, 1,260 days. A time and times and a half time is the same. So then, of course, Adventists believe in the so-called prophetic symbolism, which is a day equals a year, and based on Numbers 14:34. So for in our study, we have discovered that the beast power of Revelation 13 and 14 is a worldwide system, worship that receives the seat of its government and its throne from pagan Rome. Its leader claims the authority of God, and its priests claim the divine right to forgive sins. And these are another crucial identifying sign of the beast power. In Revelation 13:5, the beast was given a mouth to utter, proud words and blasphemies, to exercise its authority for 42 months. So Revelation 12 explains that Satan would persecute God's church during the Middle Ages. According to Revelation 12, Christ's faithful followers would flee into the wilderness for 1,260 days in Revelation chapter 12, verse 6. As we read in Revelation 12:14, the woman was given 2 wings of a great eagle, then she might fly into the wilderness to her place where she is nourished for a time and times and a half a time, and the presence of the serpent in Revelation 12:14. So if you notice, 1,260 days, a time and a times and a half a time is equivalent to 42 months. So in Daniel 7:25 explains that the little horn or a Roman church state power would intend to change times and law. Then the saints believers shall be given into his hands for a time and times and half a time in King James Version. According to Revelation 13:5, the Catholic Church state power would be allowed to continue for 42 months. These are 3 time periods, the 1,260 days, times and times and a time and half a time, and 42 months, all describe the same time period and appeal 7 times in the books of Daniel and Revelation. And so the beast would continue for a period with a specific duration. Keep in mind, a crucial scriptural as principle as it's studied this clue, in symbolic time prophecies, a prophetic day equals a literal year. This principle has proven itself repeatedly in actual practice. Calculating the actual time period mentioning in Revelation 13:5 of 42 weeks, months, with 30 days a month, as used in the Bible, we come up with 1,260 prophetic days or literal years. So, in essence, really, what we are in the prophecy here is that this 1,260 years encompass the dominance of the medieval church. The Roman church gained rowing power of the 4th and the 5th century after Christ. The Roman Emperor Constantine legalized Christianity throughout the empire. When he moved the capital in AD 330 to that became known as Constantinople, uniting eastern and western parts of the empire, it left a leadership vacuum in Rome. And the Pope then filled this void and became not only a powerful religious leader, but also a political force to be reckoned with in Europe. So in AD 538, Justinian, the Roman emperor, officially granted the Roman bishop the role of a defender of the faith, definer of heretics, and arbiter of truth. So the papacy exercised great influence from AD 538 throughout the Middle Ages. And at the end of 1,260 years, Napoleon's General Berthier took the Pope in captivity in 1798, exactly on time, 1,260 years. So, if you notice, let's look at another detail here. Because in 538, Justinian, I sent a troop to Rome to liberate them from the Ostrogoths and then made the Pope governor of Rome. That's what Constantine they said. And in the Middle Ages, the Roman Catholic Church used the power of the state to persecute those who wanted to live according to God's word, like the Waldensians or the Huguenots. And then, in 1798 AD, Napoleon Bonaparte commanded General Berthier to imprison the Pope Pius VI and dissolve the Papal States. So, if you notice, the prophecy goes beyond these events. The beast was deathly wounded, lost its authority, but it would recover its power in Revelation 13:3. And so, between 1870 and 1929 AD, the Pope didn't have any territory, and the Vatican was part of Italy. And on February 11, 1929, Pope Pius VI and Benito Mussolini created the Vatican City state. The wound was healed. Wow. And so in our discussion today, the act of General Berthier fulfilled the Revelation's prophecy in Revelation chapter 13, verse 10. He who leads into captivity shall go into captivity. Berthier and his army captured Pope Pius VI and unceremoniously removed him from the papal throne. The aged pontiff was hurried from prison and confined at length in a fortress near the Alps. He was later removed to Valente, France, where in 1799 he died alone and in exile. The blow to the papacy was as serious but not fatal. According to the prediction in Revelation 13:12, the deadly wound would be healed. The stature of the papacy would increase, and the influence would once again be felt worldwide. Today, the Roman pontiff is gaining authority, power, and influence worldwide. World leaders welcome the Pope as he travels around the world as an ambassador of the Church of Rome. For example, the Pope was warmly welcomed at the United Nations in 2015. When he toured the United States, he was invited to address a joint session of the U.S. Congress in a move that many political observers considered unprecedented. Kings, presidents, political leaders, and dignitaries visit him regularly in the Vatican and treat him royally when he visits their countries. By all external appearances, the papacy seems to be softening its image to accommodate the spirit of our age. At a time when the world is looking for a moral leadership, the Pope's star is rising rapidly. Constantine wanted the empire united, and the Roman Church wanted it converted. This is why Constantine passed the first Sunday law, and the Church reinforced his decrees in Church Council by making Sunday the sacred day of worship. So that is how the prophecy was fulfilled, 1,260 days. So our Monday's lesson, the falling away. Monday's lesson focuses on the predicted falling away. 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, 3, 4, and verses 9 to 12, which was at work in Paul's time and would flourish in later centuries. What can one do to avoid being swept away by this deception? 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verse 10 to 12. Let's read it. Not to become easily unsettled and alarmed by the teaching allegedly from us, whether by a prophecy or by a word of mouth or by a letter, asserting that the day of the Lord has already come. Don't let anyone deceive you in any way, for that day will not come until the rebellion occurs and the man of lawlessness is revealed. The man doomed to destruction, he will oppose and will exalt himself over everything that is called God or is worshipped, so that he sets himself up in God's temple, proclaiming himself to be God. In verse 9, and the coming of the lawless one will be in accordance with how Satan works. He will use all sorts of displays of power through signs and wonders that serve his lie. Now we are talking about the signs and wonders are miracles. And all the ways of the wickedness deceives those who are perishing. They perish because they refuse to love the truth and to be saved. For this reason, God sends them a powerful delusions so that they will believe in a lie, and so that all will be condemned who have not believed the truth but have delighted in the wickedness. So, a horn and a beast, a lawless one. Now, let's look at this again. The coming of the lawless one is according to the working of Satan with all power and signs and lying wonders. This is 2 Thessalonians 2:9. In Daniel chapter 7, verse 75, it says that he shall speak pompous words against the Most High, and then shall persecute the saints of the Most High. And then the saints shall be given into his hands for a time, times, and half a time. If you notice that, that is 1,260 years, as we mentioned already. Now in Revelation 13, chapter 13, verses 2 to 7, it says that the dragon gave him his power, his throne, and great authority. And then he has given a mouth speaking great things and blasphemous. He was given authority to continue for 42 months. And remember, we already discussed the 1,260 days is the same as 42 months, which is equivalent to 1,260 days. And it was granted to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. Now, Thessalonica, and if you notice, he shall speak pompous words against the Most High. And in Revelation, he was given a mouth speaking great things and blasphemies. And then, in Daniel, the same thing, shall persecute the saints of the Most High. And then in Revelation, it was granted to him to make war with the saints and to overcome them. Now, how about Paul? In second, and then the saints shall be given into his hands a time and times and half a time. He was given authority to continue for 42 months. Now, how about Paul? What Paul is saying, a lawless one. What does it say? He sits as God in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. And then the coming of the lawless one is according to the working of Satan. And then with all powers, signs, and lying wonders. If you notice, Revelation says that the dragon gave authority, power, his throne, and great authority. The coming lawless one is according to the working of Satan. And then he was given mouth, speaking great things and blasphemies. He sit as God in the temple of God, showing himself that he is God. So here, we can say that Daniel, John, and Paul identified the same power, the Roman Catholic Church, as an institution, not the church members themselves. Now we need to remember here, it is the institution, not the members of the church themselves, is the one involved here. So, if you notice, it is extremely important to remember that the Bible prophecy is describing a system of religion that has compromised God's word, substituted human traditions for the gospel, and drifted away from the biblical truth. These prophecies are given by a God of incredible love to prepare a people for the coming of Jesus. They are a rebuke to the apostate religious organizations that have departed from God's word and not necessarily the people in them. Our message is about a system that has deceived millions. Though deceived, these people are much loved by Christ. Hence, we must treat them accordingly. So, that is really the importance of because if you notice here, in our discussion today, that our message is about the system, not the people. The system that has deceived millions. So, in our discussion, again, the apostasy. How did it happen? We are talking about, on our Tuesday's lesson, we're going to talk about apostasy now. On Tuesday's lesson, Satan's final strategy. What can we learn about Satan's final strategy in Revelation 17, verses 12 to 14? What is the role of this gathering in 12 to 16? Notice the close connection between the Lamb and his believing community in 17:14. Here we learn the outcome of the Armageddon war, which was not clear in 16:13 to 16. Note the destruction of implosion from within, 17:16 to 17, rather than a divine retribution. And let's look at the text here. Look at the text. Revelation 17:12 to 14. Let's read. The 10 horns you saw are 10 kings who have not yet received a kingdom, but who for 1 hour will receive authority as kings along with the beast. They have one purpose and will give their power and authority to the beast. They will wage war against the Lamb. You notice? They will wage war against the Lamb, but the Lamb will triumph over them because he is the Lord of lords and King of kings. And with him will be called chosen and faithful followers. There is good news in there because they will wage war against the Lamb, but the Lamb will triumph over them because he is Lord of lords. Now in 16 and 17, the beast and the 10 horns you saw will hate the prostitute. They will bring her to ruin and leave her naked. They will eat the flesh and burn her with fire. For God has put into their hearts to accomplish the purpose of agreeing to hand over the beast their royal authority until God's word are fulfilled. So there is the so-called destruction by implosion from within. Within the system itself, there will be confusions and implosion. And it says here that they will hate the prostitute. Prostitute is the church, in this case really, the one that, being not true to God's word. So, if you notice in this case here, in our discussion today, how will it happen? How will it happen? These are the one mind, and they will give their power and authority to the beast. 17:13, Revelation. So, during the final apostasy, the scarlet beast on which the Babylon is seated, not the beast in Revelation 13, will use the civil powers symbolized by its 10 horns to give power to the beast. Revelation 17:12 to 13. So, they try to fight against Jesus, the Lamb, However, they will be defeated in Revelation 17:14. And how will it happen? We don't know the details, but the world will look for a leader who could help them in the greatest crisis ever. Both the religious and political leaders will choose one main leader, the horn, the beast, the lawless one. The image of the beast will impose its mark of loyalty. So that is how will it happen. So on our Wednesday's lesson, and how are they going to do that? They are going to mark his people. The mark of the beast. Wednesday's lesson finally brings us to the mark of the beast. Revelation 14:9, chapter 13, 16 to 17. Why is the mark of the beast placed either in the forehead or on the hand, while the seal of God is placed only on the forehead? In chapter 3:12, chapter 7, verses 2 to 3, and 22, verse 4. It said, the third angel followed them and said in a loud voice, if anyone worship the beast and its image and receive its mark on the forehead or on their hand. It also, in Revelation 13, 16, 17, it also forced all people, great and small, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hands and on their foreheads, so that they could not buy or sell unless they had a mark, which is the name of the beast or the number of its name. This calls for wisdom. Let the person who has the insight calculate number of the beast, for it is a number of a man. That number is 6666, 666. So, if you notice in here, a common day of worship has been a potential to unite a divided world. The issue of the mark of the beasts revolves around worship. It focuses on the issue of authority. Since the change of the Bible, Sabbath was instituted by a church-state union in the early Christian church. Worship on the first day of the week is the sign of a papal authority. To change the law of God, someone or some group must have authority that is falsely assumed to be higher than God's authority. So, on our Wednesday's lesson, it could then say here, again, mark of the beast, it says, then I saw another 7, 2 to 3, another angel coming up from the east having the seal of the living God. He called out in a loud voice to our 4 angels who had been given power to harm the land and the sea. Do not harm the land or the sea or the trees until we put a seal on the foreheads of the servants of God. And in Revelation 22:4, they will see his face and his name will be on their foreheads. So the seal of God's servant or the followers of God is in the forehead only, whereas the seal or the seal of the mark of the beast or the mark of the beast is in the hands or on the forehead. How does that work? Let's look at it. Because he causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on the right hand or on their foreheads. It says that the mark can be received in 2 ways. On the right hand, by obeying the imposed rules even if we don't agree. And then, on the forehead, by actually believing that the imposed rules are true. So, the mark is related to worship. Revelation 13:15. According to 13:17 of Revelation, the mark is the name of the beast, number of its name, 666, as we mentioned already. So the names in the Bible represents the character of the person. Therefore, we will have to choose between God's character or the beast's. And so that is how it works. According to Ellen White, the worldly power will suggest that everyone will have to worship or rest on the same day in order to overcome the crisis, and that day will be Rome's Wednesday, Sunday. So here we can see that in the Great Controversy, page 188, those who honor the Bible Sabbath will be denounced as enemies of law and order, as breaking down the moral restraints of society, causing anarchy and corruption, and calling down the judgment of God upon the earth. Their conscientious scruples will be pronounced obstinacy, stubbornness, and contempt of authority. They will be accused of disaffection toward the government. Ministers who deny the obligation of the divine law will present from the pulpit the duty of yielding obedience to the civil authorities as ordained of God. In legislative halls and courts of justice, commandment keepers will be misrepresented and condemned. Great Controversy by Ellen White, page 188. So we are the seal. Well, how about the seal of God? How about the seal of the redeemed? How are we going to distinguish them? Now, if you notice, it is about the Sabbath according to our lesson, the Sabbath tests. But we need to also balance it out. The Gospel of John shows the risk of observing the Sabbath while separating it from its meaning. John 19:31. The day itself had achieved independent standing, no question about it, because it's been there established since the beginning of the creation of this world. It was there. There was no need. But it says that the day had become more important than its meaning. Finally, there was no need to consider the meaning. Worship, it became the right day but a wrong meaning. That's why when Jesus devoted a significant portion of his ministry to correcting the spirituality wrongly understood or pursued. Let's read it. Now, John 19:31, it was day of preparation, which is Friday. The next day was to be a special Sabbath. A special Sabbath is that the Passover and the Sabbath day at the same day at that time when Jesus was crucified. Because the Jewish leaders did not want the bodies left on the crosses during the Sabbath. They asked Pilate to have the legs broken and the bodies taken down. Now, wow, if you notice this, based on the Calvinist theology, the Sabbath has been seen through the centuries more of a sign of God's authority. Thus, it was emphasized, it was the authority question and the necessity of obedience response. But is that the meaning of the Sabbath? Because that was also the meaning during the time of Jesus. It was about obedience to the rules. But if you look at the sin in the prism of God's character, the Sabbath is a sign of God's commitment more than a divine commandment. You know, God's commitment is the primary biblical meaning. We see God's commitment in God's rest in Genesis chapter 2, verses 1 to 3. In God's promise in Isaiah 56, 1 to 8, we see it clearly in John, where the extent of God's commitment is demonstrated in conspicuous Sabbath healings. Because when Jesus was here on earth, he fulfilled a lot of, did a lot of miracles during the Sabbath day, which is against the rules of that day, during that time. And so this absurdity comes to a head precisely as the Passover Friday, when Sabbath observing Jews were rushing to put things in order so they could observe the Sabbath properly. When Revelation says God's dwelling place is now among the people and He will dwell with them in Revelation 21:3, it portrays the Sabbath in the form of God's enduring commitment as a start of eternal Sabbath. Classical Christianity argues that the Sabbath is changeable because it is arbitrary. Most Sabbath defenders concur that it is arbitrary, but they do not agree that it should be changed. But in the controversy between good and evil, in the biblical narrative, revolves around the question of whether God is arbitrary. It is difficult to appreciate how God will be vindicated from a charge that is arbitrary under a symbol that proves God's arbitrariness. Moreover, if the alleged arbitrary feature the Sabbath as made to be its most fundamental characteristics, it certainly leaves a residue of arbitrariness in God's reputation. By choosing this line of reasoning, defenders of the Sabbath may be winning the battle for the Sabbath at the tremendous cost of losing the war concerning the character of God. Now, if the third angel's message is the eternal gospel, like the first two messages, then it must be about God's character of love, undeserved grace, eternal commitment to the created children. And because of the finality of the outcome of this last battle, in his final pleading, God uses such language to give a wayward children every chance to understand the critical and eternal significance of the choice that they make. He wants to see his children saved, not deceived. Again, he wants his children, to see his children saved, not deceived. When preaching the third angel's message, how can we express this in a positive, motivating context rather than denouncing people? How can, when we deal with a future unfulfilled prophecy, how can we help people concentrate on God's character rather than on a day? Because the sealing, as mentioned in first in Revelation, then the mark of the beast, I think the mark of the beast, it really is a symbol of loyalty to the opposition. Should be compared to the symbol of loyalty to God. And I believe to receive the seal of God is to be settled into the truth, both intellectually and spiritually, that one cannot be moved. I believe that to receive the mark of the beast is to be so settled into the lie, and there are scriptures that talk about it, the lie, preferring Satan's lie than to the truth. You have substituted his lies for the truth. And I believe to receive the mark of the beast is to be settled into Satan's false picture of God, that not even the Spirit of God could move us. We cannot be moved. So in essence, the seal of the mark or the mark represents an inner decision and a commitment for eternity with respect to God, whether you accept Him or not. One has to stop to realize that the people who crucified Christ, as mentioned already in John, kept the seventh Sabbath scrupulously, very, very carefully. Did they have the seal of God? They certainly were not settled into the truth about God. When Jesus brought the truth about God, they said he had a devil, and they killed him to silence his witness. On the Sabbath day, if you notice, and because of the finality, and in here we can see that a future in a sense really is that I believe that during the time, they certainly were not settled into the truth, when Jesus brought the first truth about God. On the other hand, though, you remember that evening we talked about how the Sabbath sums up the good news about our God. I believe that in knowing the meaningful, intelligent, thoughtful observance of the Sabbath day as a reminder of this great demonstration of the truth about our God could be outward expression of an inward conviction and a settling into the truth about our God. So the seventh-day Sabbath beautifully fits this mark of identification of those who are committed to the truth about God. So really, in order for us to make it real, we have to be balanced. Then I look and behold a lamb standing on Mount Zion, Revelation 14:1, and with him 144,000, having his Father's name written in their foreheads. So those who reject the mark of the beast will be sealed by God. They will have the name, the character of Jesus, and will show it by keeping his commandments. And the fourth commandment, the Sabbath, determines who we worship, because the seventh day is the seal of God, his title and his domain. It says, he is the creator of heaven and earth. And then his name is that the Lord your God. So we are sealed by the Holy Spirit when we accept Jesus. Ephesians 4:30. The Holy Spirit will give us faith to stand firm in the final crisis. He will help us to receive the mark of the true worshipers of God. Ezekiel 9:4, 20:12, and Revelation chapter 3. Prophets and kings. I'm now about to close our presentation here with a few slides left. Among earth's inhabitants, scattered in every land, there are those who have not bowed the knee to Baal, like the stars of heaven, which appears only at night. These faithful ones will shine forth when darkness covers the earth. And in the hour of a deepest apostasy, when Satan's supreme effort is made to cause all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive under the penalty of death the sign of allegiance to a false rest day. These faithful ones, blameless and harmless, the sons of God without rebuke, will shine as light in the world. Revelation 13:16, Philippians 2:15. The darker the night, the more brilliantly will they shine. And we are going to talk about that next week, on last lesson next week, that the darker the night, the more brilliantly they will shine. Wow. In this crisis of God's faithful people, will by His grace and through His power stand firm in the conviction to follow Him. They heed Christ's command, convictions. In John, if you love me, it says John 14:15, if you love me, keep my commandments. The best power are sealed, and the prophecy of Revelation 13 tells us the last days, during the time of universal crisis, God's people step forward and place their stamp, their seal on the covenant of the keeping, the true Sabbath. And God wants the universe to behold the triumph of His grace in this people. He wants everyone to know that even in a time of universal apostasy and repudiations of His law, yes, even in the face of death decree, He will have a people whose loyalty to Him is unswerving. The sealing of God's shout of triumph and His victory banner over that He will wave before the universe. The hearts of the believers saved by grace are filled with the faith of Jesus. So, this is, to summarize our discussion this morning, few slides. The biblical prophecy is and how it reveals to us God's knowledge about the future events. Revelation 13 predicts the future, and this is for the church to be prepared. And nothing less than the whole armor of righteousness can enable man to overcome the powers of darkness and retain the victory over them. Ellen White, early writing, page 274. And the angels that excels in strength, obedient to His command, are waiting to unite with human agencies. Selected Messages, Book 2, page 372 to 373. And the last slide here. Just as the seal of God is not received in an instant, neither is the mark of the beast. Now think about it. And that is our lesson for today. Thank you for viewing this presentation, and may it be that as we think about this, at least the question is, why revelation? Because the church need it. They need it to prepare for the future. Let's pray. Dear Lord, thank you again. Thank you for this lesson, giving us insight of what's going to come, and giving us suggestion of how to prepare for it. And because of your grace that supports us and enable us to prepare for this crisis, help us, Lord, to always focus our eyes on you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.